It's Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan up against Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia. Today on Political Access, we're going to play out this hypothetical 2024 presidential matchup. This was suggested in the comments. It's similar to some previous ones I've done, but let's just play it out anyway. Safe states are over a 10-point margin, likely 5 to 10 points, lean under 5 points, and tilt 1 point or less. So how would this one go? Well, both these candidates are moderately establishment, and Gretchen Whitmer is going to try to bridge that coalition with the progressives. Glenn Youngkin is going to try to corral the Trump voters along with his establishment. Gretchen Whitmer is going to do better in the upper Midwest, as well as all the other typical blue spots. Glenn Youngkin, along with Whitmer, will do reasonable in the suburbs, and he might do a little bit better trying to bring back some of those Republican voters who may have left the party since Donald Trump. Both of them are reasonably popular governors of their states. Glenn Youngkin has only been in office for about a year. He's got some time left. His popularity could fade or it could get even stronger, so it's hard to gauge. Plus the national environment, plus running mates, plus specific issues. There's a lot of unknowns, but let's get started. In Alaska, that will be low double digits, safe for Youngkin. Hawaii, very safe for Gretchen Whitmer. Washington, Oregon, California, very safe for Whitmer. Would Glenn Youngkin get the margins reduced in a place like Washington and Oregon? Yeah, I would think he would do a little bit better than Donald Trump there, but not enough to get it into single digits. How about in Nevada? That will be a competitive state, drifting slightly toward the right. I think Gretchen Whitmer is not going to have a lot of appeal in some of these western states. She's from the upper Midwest. She would do better there. But over here in the Southwest, I think Glenn Youngkin would probably do a little bit better in a state like Nevada. It would be very close, but I have Glenn Youngkin winning it by a tilt margin. Idaho, Utah, safe for Youngkin. Arizona. This state has been tough for the Republicans as of late. Even though it's trending toward the left, I think there's enough Republican voters there that have been looking for something that's not Donald Trump to vote for, but they can't bring themselves to vote for the Democrat. So I think enough of them would come back, especially in the suburbs, and I have Glenn Youngkin winning this by a low 1 to 2 point lean margin. Montana, Wyoming, safe for Youngkin. Colorado, that will be just under 10 points, likely for Gretchen Whitmer. New Mexico, that will be just over 5 points, likely for Gretchen Whitmer. North Dakota, South Dakota, safe for Youngkin. Nebraska at large, safe for Youngkin. The 2nd District, it is a bluer district. It's not as blue as it was prior to redistricting, but the trends are not great for the Republicans there. I think this would go for Whitmer by low to mid-single digits, so lean for Whitmer. Kansas, Oklahoma, over 10 points safe for Youngkin. How about in Texas? That will go likely for Glenn Youngkin. Youngkin would not have as many people coming out to vote against him, so I think Texas would kind of resort back to its default political status, and it would be likely for Glenn Youngkin. Up to Minnesota, that will be likely for Gretchen Whitmer. There's still a lot of working class vote in Minnesota, hasn't really flipped toward the Republicans yet. I don't think they would do so for Glenn Youngkin. Gretchen Whitmer, she kind of has the Michigan accent. She'd probably fit in some of these upper Midwest states a little bit better than Glenn Youngkin, and she would win that by mid to high single digits. Iowa, on the other hand, would go likely for Glenn Youngkin, probably also mid to high single digits. Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, safe for Glenn Youngkin. Let's go up to Wisconsin. Tough call. This state borders Michigan, where Gretchen Whitmer is from. I could see this going either way. There are some sparsely populated counties that are still light blue and still light red. They also haven't gone hard toward the Republicans yet. So I could see Youngkin winning this, but given the proximity toward Michigan, I have to slightly put this as a tilt for Whitmer. Illinois, that'll be over 10 points, safe for Whitmer. Let's go to Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer's home state. There's no question she would win this. I have it as a likely for Whitmer. Indiana, that will stay safe for Glenn Youngkin. Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, safe for Glenn Youngkin. Let's go to Florida. I understand the state is trending toward the right, especially after these midterms. I want to see how the trends go on a presidential level. I do have Glenn Youngkin winning it by a lean margin. This would be borderline likely, 4.5 to 5 points. If you want to put it as likely, I understand. I just want to wait to see what the trends are. But I don't think there's any way Gretchen Whitmer would win Florida. How about in Georgia? This is a tricky state. Democrats are feeling much better about it as time goes on. The Atlanta suburbs, they've gone away from the GOP. Could Glenn Youngkin be the one that brings them back a little bit, while also still getting turnout in the rural counties? Very close call for me. I'm going to say Glenn Youngkin is able to slightly hold off the trends, and Georgia would go red one more time by a tilt margin. South Carolina, over 10 points safe for Youngkin. North Carolina, low to mid-single digits for Glenn Youngkin. It possibly could even get to likely. Let's go up to Ohio. That will be likely for Glenn Youngkin. I think the state is just too far gone for the Democrats. Even if Gretchen Whitmer is from a neighboring state, Glenn Youngkin would win this easily by over 5 points. About West Virginia, very safe for Glenn Youngkin. Let's go to Maine at large. This will be just under 10 points, likely for Gretchen Whitmer. First district, that's very blue. That will be safe for Whitmer. The second district, that's gotten much redder over the past decade. Donald Trump has won it twice. Glenn Youngkin would get a reasonable turnout here. He's not going to fire up people as much as Donald Trump did in his prime, but he would still win it by a likely margin. New Hampshire, this is a close one for me. I think Gretchen Whitmer would do better in the Northeast. In the higher educated, wealthier states, I think Glenn Youngkin would do well here 10 or 20 years ago, but I do have Gretchen Whitmer winning it by a tilt margin. And that may even be a little bit too generous toward Youngkin. I could see her winning it by 2, even up to 4 points. Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, Washington, D.C. Those are going to be safe for Gretchen Whitmer. I think Glenn Youngkin would do okay in some of those states relative to some of the margins Donald Trump got. Again, because I do not think people are going to be motivated to vote against him, but he still would not get any of them under a 10-point margin. Let's go to Pennsylvania. There's another state where Republicans, they've been able to have success here, but not at all consistently. And in this matchup, I have Gretchen Whitmer winning it by 1 to 3 points, lean for Whitmer. And finally, the very last state is Glenn Youngkin's home state of Virginia. And my thinking is, it used to be a red state. It's just trended too far toward the Democrats. And Glenn Youngkin did win as governor, that's true. But statewide politics are different than national politics. I think Glenn Youngkin would do pretty well, given the circumstances. He would definitely get it under a 5-point margin. I just don't think it would get down to a tilt or even flip. I do have it as a lean for Gretchen Whitmer, and that is my map, and that would result in 268 electoral votes for Glenn Youngkin, 270 for Gretchen Whitmer, and Gretchen Whitmer would very, very narrowly pull out a win here. This is very similar to a recent matchup I did between Gretchen Whitmer and Ron DeSantis. So you could make some tweaks here. I understand that. This is what I settled on. I think with a lot of elections now, it would come down to the suburbs and whoever could turn out their respective base. Could Glenn Youngkin win this matchup? I do think he could win it. Obviously, with a very narrow electoral win like this is anybody's game. I do think Glenn Youngkin would be a better national campaigner than Gretchen Whitmer. I think he's already been around the country doing it in the recent midterms. I think Gretchen Whitmer's appeal would not be as strong as she would like outside of Michigan. And I also think Glenn Youngkin could come off as a little bit like Mitt Romney, where he's a little bit too elite, a little bit too country club, and out of touch. So there are some different factors at play here. It's hard to predict this kind of thing, but this is what I came up with. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this matchup? Who do you think would flip which states, and why? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.